everybody, my name is Elizabeth and welcome back to my channel where I encourage everyone to get out and enjoy their lives, even if that means doing it by yourself. Today I am here at the National Museum of the Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. I have actually never been here before and I'm a little embarrassed because I've lived in Dayton for almost 19 years and I've never been here. First, I'm embarrassed because I thought it was like this little dinky thing and it's clearly not. And second, just that I've been here so long and I've been hearing for years like how amazing it is and I've never come. So we're gonna fix that today. So let's go in and see what it's like. Okay, so starting off in the early years. Okay, to start with, they're talking about hot air balloons. And I find it amusing because in the 1780s when they were first doing it, they said that they were experimenting with using non-flammable air such as hydrogen as a means of lift. So they didn't know it was flammable. Okay, so I just read about this balloon and it is the first human flight balloon from 1783. I mean, the sign, I don't see anywhere that it says that it's a reproduction, but it's made of, what, paper and... Oh, yeah, wait, no, I'm wrong. Museum staff built this model in the 1960s, so that's not the original one. I was like, how did that survive? It's only made out of paper. It did not. But over here, they were talking about how balloons were used during the Civil War. For surveillance and things like that, just during the first part because the military people stopped being cooperative with the balloon engineers and stuff. But here we have a note from Abraham Lincoln that is basically saying like, hey, see this guy about his balloon, and kind of open the door for Lowe. That is S.C. Lowe, who is the main balloon person for the Union, to actually get a meeting with the generals. That's pretty cool. This is going to take me hours to go through. They have like 7 of these massive hangars and this is just the first one. So a lot of the stuff on display in this room, it seems, is going to be a reproduction because it's just so old, that they've reproduced it. But a lot of the stuff later on, especially, is not reproductions. It's going to be the actual planes. Here we have a J1, and what I read on the sign is that it was authentic, but it is restored. It was restored in the 80s by the museum. The SPAD 7, another one that's original, but was restored. I think I can stop saying which things are reproductions and which things aren't because everything so far since those early ones have been authentic. So we're getting into World War I planes. Okay, so this is an aerial torpedo. It's called the Bug. And essentially, it would fly a certain distance and then like a circuit would close and the engine would turn off and the wings would close and it would drop. It would drop and it was filled with explosives and it was an aerial torpedo. It seems, hey, what do I know? But it seems like these are probably expensive and to not be able to get the flying contraption back seems pointless. And they never went into combat, so that makes sense. So this is a Martin V10, and this specific one is the only known one in existence, and it was created by America, like the designs, but this one was in Argentina as like a training plane for some engineering students, and the museum, when they found out it was in Argentina, they really wanted an example of it because of how historically important it was, because it's something like the first metal bomber or something like that, and they started negotiating with Argentina to get it, and in 1970 it was given as a gift to the United States by Argentina. Pretty cool. Okay, we're done with the early flight and we're headed into World War II. So one thing that the plaques were talking about with this plane specifically was how that at the beginning, well, like in 1941, 1942, the German submarines were making it very hard for ships to leave their coast because they were right off the U.S. Eastern coast and sinking lots and lots of ships, really interfering with shipping, all that kind of stuff. And the Navy was not equipped to deal with like an anti-submarine like task force, I guess. And so the Air Force stepped in and used bombers and machine gun and things like that to take down the submarines and kind of force them back into open water. And one cool thing about this one right here is that I can walk underneath it. And yes, it is as close as it looks. Okay, so let's see if I can get this. I'm not looking at the plane, but this seat right here with the propellers on top. And so this was built in Germany. Only about 200 of them were built. And it was meant to be like one person up there, like as an for observation, towed by a surfaced submarine. That its maximum height is about 720 feet, but it would be towed anywhere between 17 and 25 miles per hour. And normally it would be lowered by a winch from the deck, but if there was an emergency, the pilot would hit like a button and the whole thing would kind of fall apart, and he would like parachute down. So yeah, that would be horrifying. So all of the planes, like this one that I'm standing under, have a little placard, and part of that placard gives you technical notes. And depending on the plane, it gives you different information, but usually it would have like range and speed and things like that. But this one also has information about the machine guns. I was looking at this plane, I thought I know that name from somewhere because it's a very memorable name. And I was trying to remember, and then I remembered I was reading a book a couple months ago about Dayton, like ghost stories, and it talked about the Air Force Museum, and this plane came up. It is supposed to be haunted. I don't remember the specifics of what happens, but I think these pieces from like another of the same type, which crashed, I think in Africa, are also supposed to be haunted. I could be wrong about these ones, but this for sure was in the book. And here is the Memphis Belle, which is a bomber. It flew 25 successful missions in Europe and was the first bomber to return to the U.S. at the end of the war. It is the actual plane. It was restored and finally put on display here at the museum in 2018. So these bombs and stars, this is the same thing that was on the side of the Memphis Belle. I don't know what the stars mean. I don't see something that says, and I don't know what the red versus the yellow stars mean. If anyone knows, tell me in the comments, because I'd like to know. And it has the entire Memphis Belle crew. That's really cute that he has a picture with his dog. Has a lot of people on the crew. So this is a missile, a V-2 missile that was developed by Germany. It was powerful. It was like a long-range missile, but it was hard to aim, so it was overall ineffective and was not enough to prevent them losing the war at the end. And they couldn't produce enough of them to make a difference. But It says at the end of the war, the United States government brought a lot of them over here to study. It became the technological base for human spaceflight. So for those of you who know your World War II history better than I do, will not have to have me tell you what this plane is. But for those of you who don't know, like I didn't know the name of this plane, this is one of the planes that dropped the bombs on Japan. This one specifically dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. This is the actual plane. It was flown here after it returned from the war and has been here ever since. It feels a bit surreal standing here looking at it. So this is the other side of it. And I read that there's a reproduction, obviously a fake reproduction of the bomb. So let me see if I can get closer. So here it is. This is a reproduction of the bomb that the boxcar plane dropped. It's called Fat Man. And then they also have a reproduction of the one that was dropped on Hiroshima called Little Boy. That was a really interesting room. I do enjoy learning about the World War II. Anytime I see something that ended a lot of lives, it just, it's weighty. Yeah, so I don't have a lot to say. Okay, so behind me, I'm walking past the Aviation Hall of Fame, and I'm passing it because it has been over an hour and I've only done about a quarter of the museum, so I need to pick up the pace. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Korea War this way, Vietnam that way, but it's so big. So let's just, we'll start with the right because that's the oldest, and we'll go the other way. Okay, so one of my favorite television shows is MASH, and this just looks exactly like that. Pretty interesting looking helicopter. Also, I'm under the largest plane that I've seen yet, and I'm putting it for last because I am allowed to go through it, so I'm gonna do that last. Or last in this section, I guess. But there's something over here that you can go through here too, but I want to see what it is. Okay, I will go in a minute, but it's a fuselage from a B-29. It has the 7 doors painted on it. I think this is a replica, but it said, or maybe it's a real one, but they just painted it to look like a more famous one called Command Decision. But then they have these pictures of other ones then, how they painted theirs. Okay, let's go in. Oh my. Oh wow. Okay.
I'm going, babe. My leg didn't move for a minute.
Whoa. Okay. And I can finally stand up. Okay. Let's go on. that is a very steep slope. So that was the Korean War area. Now we're heading to Vietnam. Yeah, it wasn't as extensive as like the World War II and even like the early flight area. Probably because there weren't as many advancements during that time, but that's just my guess. Alright, first one is another massive one. I don't think I can go into this one, but we'll see when we get to the back of it. These are all painted a bit more uniformly, like the other ones like had like a lot of personalization on them and were like more colorful, and these ones are all like camouflaged. This is a Bell UH-1P Iroquois. Okay, so this is Cold War. Okay, so we got a plane called Dennis the Menace. And then we also have this little rocket. It was an air-to-air missile called the Mighty Mouse. It was later phased out, but it was known for being small but very powerful. This is an F-86H, and they took off part of its skin just to see, so you could see like where the location of different things are. Pretty cool. They said that they were never used in combat, but they were still like powerful fighters and bombers that could have been used if we ever needed them. I am zoomed as far out as I can, and it's still hard for me to get everything in the shot. Okay, so this is an XB-36 landing gear. Yes, it's massive. It says that these were developed during, the plane was developed during World War II, and because of, well, look how hard it would have been to produce, but they also, it was unsafe for them to land at a lot of airstrips because of that, so they redesigned it into like 4 smaller tires for each landing gear, which is more like what we see today. Okay, so here we have pieces of the Berlin Wall. It's at the west side of the wall, which this is from, became a huge artist canvas in its final years. Alright, so heading into, I'm assuming, Soviet Union aircraft. Oh, this one's from Desert Storm, so we are getting out of Cold War, but let's see. Okay, so this makes more sense because I was confused about why we're still in the Cold War, and this one says it's from Desert Storm, and that's because the RF-4C was used from the Cold War, where it was developed all the way up through the 90s, and so this one specifically flew during Desert Storm. It served in Vietnam, Japan, Korea, Europe, Cuba, and the Middle East, and it served during Desert Storm. So I was like, do I really not know my history that well? But yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so the first one that I've recognized that is Soviet and not United States, and it looks different, right? Like the shape of it is just not quite what we build here. Here's a Nighthawk, another one that was developed earlier, but also flew during the Desert Storm. Okay, so this is an Iraqi jet. was found buried in the sand outside of Baghdad, and its wings have never been found. So we are in the missile silo room. I don't know. And yeah, they're talking about like ones that launch into space, and they're so tall. I had to come all the way over here. There's a couple more that I can't see from here because they're doing a tour on the other side of the room, and he has a mic and he's very loud. So I was like, oh, let me come over here. But it is limiting which ones I can see. Like there's another one there. And then there's like a skinny one over there. Yeah. Pretty awesome. Okay, I finally made it to the last hangar, and up here we have space as well as like presidential planes. There's a research and development area and something called Global Reach. So let's look around. Okay, start with, we've got a couple spacesuits. This one is from the Mercury from 1963. And then over here, we have an Apollo spacesuit. Not just Apollo 11.
Just by himself.
Oh, but it says it's a reproduction. Like I get that we can't have originals of everything, but I always get a little disappointed when I see the word reproduction. Oh my. Apollo 15. This is on loan from the National Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian. Which means this is authentic. That's awesome. Alright, another reproduction. Okay. This one is a defense support program early warning satellite. It was an early warning system for when missiles were launched and things like that. It does say that this one was a test vehicle, so it makes me think that this one was not actually in space. Which makes sense, because usually things that are in space do not come nicely back like this unless they are manned. At least, that's my understanding. Oh my gosh, I don't know if this thing is authentic or not. I'll have to find the sign for it. So I think the thing above me is this Titan IVB rocket. That's what I'm assuming. And it does not say that it's a reproduction, so let's see if I can find more information. Okay, so the little I was able to find about it was that these were single-use rockets, which makes me think that, while I think it's authentic, this one never actually went into space. That's my guess. I was not able to verify that, but that's what I think. So, they have this space shuttle display. The front part, I think it said it was like an actual crew compartment training from NASA, an actual place where the crew trained, but then the rest of it is just built to scale to look like the rest of the space shuttle. So let's go on. Okay, so here's a better angle and a better view of the whole thing. So it's only that front part up there that's the training. The rest of it is just built to scale. Alright, so that's the door I came through. So up here, this is where they trained. Okay, there's also a part up there, so we're gonna go up there. Alright, so the second training area, which is obviously where they controlled it from. Well, that's pretty interesting. There wasn't as much up here, but that's because like the back part is like used for like carrying the payload and all that kind of stuff. So it's not where they had any controls or things like that. So it was pretty just wide open, except for that front part that I showed you. All right. I think we're gonna go see the presidential planes, and then if I see anything else, we'll look at that. But then we'll wrap it up. The first is this one called the Sacred Cow, and it was FDR's presidential airplane. And as you can see, the walkways are going to be kind of narrow, so I will turn the camera back on when we get upstairs. We're kidding. This is our house. Here's a little kitchen. Here's sleeping quarters for some of the crew.
Staticky, it's catching our hair. Yep, that shocks me. Oh, slow down, I can't see it all, Annie. It shocks
Sleeping
me.
quarters?
Are you seeing what's in here?
Man.
Like eating places.
Nobody should come on here if they're claustrophobic. Oh, there's like a meeting room. And then seating. Not quite as glamorous as you think of the Air Force One to be. Okay, and this one is the Independence. It's Harry S. Truman's plane. It looks very similar. I'm going to move on and see what other ones they have. Okay, and this one is the Columbine III. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower's airplane. And while it does look a lot different than the first two, I don't really want to feel claustrophobic again, so I'm not going to go on. Okay, so this is the last of the presidential airplanes on display here. It was the first jet airplane that was built specifically with the intention of flying United States presidents. And it did fly a total of 8 of them from, let's see, let me get up here and remember which ones. So it carried 8 American presidents: Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Clinton. It was the plane that carried Kennedy to Texas before his assassination, and then returned President Johnson and Kennedy's body back to Washington, D.C., and then continued on with the other, 6 presidents that I mentioned until it was replaced.
Service weapons. Oh, yeah.
Communication facility. So you could be in contact with Washington, D.C. Little kitchen. Seats that look much comfier than the one on the other plane I went through. Some benches. Television. Well, that was very impressive. I didn't know what to expect. In my head, for some reason, I had a much smaller museum in mind. Like, I thought that mostly it was going to be like reading and displays, and they might have like uniforms on display while they talked about the airplanes, or had like pictures of the airplanes. And I knew they had some, like, I did know that they had some airplanes there, but I did not expect it to be like several massive hangars with just full of airplanes. Like, that's what it was. And then they also had like tons and tons of like, information about the Air Force program and through all the different eras and things like that. Most of which I just did not have time to read. I was there for over 3 hours, I think. And I hardly read any of what they had there because they had so much information, and just realistically, I did not have time to like look at all the information they had. So I focused mainly on the airplanes. I'm a little embarrassed that I have never been there before. Part of it was like, when I first moved here and people talked about the Air Force Museum, I was like, that doesn't really sound like my thing. And then, which maybe it was true at the time, but like, as I get older, like, I kind of enjoy any museum. But, and then the longer I lived here, it was almost like, how long can I go without going to the Air Force Museum? So I started not going on purpose. I would just like, not that the opportunity came up very often, but like, I just, I didn't go because I was like, oh, like, how long can I live in Dayton without going there? But I kind of regret it because after, going today and seeing how cool it is and how impressive it is and what a great collection they have, like, I should have been going there a long time. And then I could have, read some of the stuff, and every time I went, I could have like learned a little bit more and looked at different areas and things like that. So definitely I'll go back and learn more. The one great thing is that it is free. Admission is totally free. They do have like other things that you can pay for, like those simulators I showed you, and they had like a little theater there where you could watch some kind of movies. And there was a charge for that. And I feel like there may have been maybe some tours or things like that. I think you could pay for some tours. But just to go in, it was, I didn't pay anything today to go into that museum, and it's an impressive museum. So, but because of that, it means I can go back as often as I want and not worry about like spending a lot of money or anything. So, I should have been going there for a long time and enjoying one of the great things that is offered here in Dayton, and I did not do that. But hey, I finally went, and I will be going back. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at LeadTheLifeVlog, and I'll see you next time. Bye.